Welcome, welcome, officially welcome. Yes, I've been really cultivating this picture this morning of Mary Magdalene in the garden as we approach our topic today of working with the honeybees. And of course, as you know, we've been on this journey of this eightfold path through Holy Week. And it's really been a beautiful experience, and we'll talk more about that as we go along. But I really want to open this space with and create a sacred container for us, really just bringing our human light into this realm of sub nature, and to just wake up those forces there, to say the Christ in us is coming to redeem you. So here we are. And to help us do that, I'm going to ask Jeffrey Norris to read for us the Easter verse. Put us in the Easter mood.
I will speak it in German original first, and then in a translation that I have made of it. The beginning of the year for Rudolf Steiner, for us, is Easter Day. Not January, but Easter Day. Wenn aus den Weltenweiten die Sonne spricht zum Menschensinn und Freude aus den Seelentiefen dem Licht sich eint im Schauen, dann ziehen aus der Selbstheit Hülle Gedanken in die Raumesfernen und binden dumpf des Menschenwesen an des Geistes Sein. When out of widths of worlds the sun communes with human sense, and joy from depths of soul unites with light in vision, then from out of selfhood's sheath thoughts ray out into distances of space and dimly bind the human essence to the spirit's being.
Yes, that is filling the space now with this beautiful image. Thank you, Dr. Steiner. Thank you, Jeff, for that beautiful reading. Yes, Easter. It's a spiritual event that takes place on the stage of humanity. And in the new mysteries, we follow the path. It's a Rosicrucian Christian initiation through Holy Week. And with every step, from the recognition of the old atavistic sun on Palm Sunday, through to the meeting of the Saturn spirit and the harrowing of hell, we sow healing seeds sprouted in the blood of Christ that spark the rising of the new sun of Easter within ourselves and in the universe. So, like Christ, we have to descend to ascend. And we've certainly been experiencing that the last few years. And yeah, every year we have a chance to recapitulate the original Easter event. And with the weekday exercises given to us through the Buddha's noble eightfold path to enlightenment, renewed by Rudolf Steiner, we have a powerful tool that we can apply, not just seasonally, not just once a year, but every day. Every day we can work on our inner development so that we can meet this bigger cycle more fully. This year we've used this path to bring us to this new sun of Easter. And in a moment, we will invite Dottie Zold to speak of her experience of working on this path with elderberries for many years. But first, I want to make sure that everybody knows to have some real honey and a beeswax candle, right? Does everyone have their paper and colored pencils? Because we'll be working with those for our experiential piece with our keynote speaker, Ines Katharina Kinchen, who is the founder of the Honeybee Habitat Project, right? Do you call it the Emerald Ark Honeybee Sanctuary? I believe that's what you're calling it.
Yeah, sanctuary for bees and people
Yeah.
in its very beginning stages.
So this beautiful little small biodynamic initiative, right? You're in the Appalachian Mountains of Eastern Tennessee. And so we'll have Ines in a moment. And then after that, we are getting an amazing treat because we get to hear the fairy tale Rock Spring Wonder. And this is from Rudolf Steiner's mystery drama. And we'll get to do that in Eurythmy with Mary Rood. So that's our agenda for today. And so, to let this bridge happen between the work that we've been doing through the Holy Week, I'm going to ask Dottie to be our bridge into our honeybee sanctuary today, and call Dottie to the platform now. Welcome, Dottie. Happy Easter.
Good Easter, Hazel. Good Easter, dear friends. I would offer that, I'm not used to speaking in front of people, so if you have a little patience with me, or and I may look at my book here, it's not my natural inclination. So just want to say thank you, everyone. Thank you, Hazel, for the opportunity to share about this kind of work that we're doing here at Elderberries. Right now I'm next door to the Rudolf Steiner branch, which has been hosting our work for the last 3 years. Elderberries has been in existence now for 13 years. It's the 13th year. And I would say that when I encountered Rudolf Steiner's work, I encountered it through the book Archangel Michael, His Mission and Ours. Took me about 3 years to read that book. Didn't know who Rudolf Steiner was, just knew that I had an angel and his name was Michael. And after 3 years, at the same time, I was reading the Gospel of John from the King James Version. So I was in between these two spaces, wondering why was I reading this book that I had no understanding, no idea of how to understand the words that were in Rudolf Steiner's work. The Bible I understood, but Rudolf Steiner's work, I couldn't understand what I was meeting, but I kept reading. And I would say after that meeting, my next book was How to Know Higher Worlds. And then I would say I encountered along the way guidance of esoteric training, within which we find the work by Mabel Collins called Light on the Path. And I am going to put that in the chat so that everybody can see what her work is. In 1888, she came up with this. And she, this is one of two exegeses that Rudolf Steiner wrote. And I found it really profound. I was going through an experience with the Christ for those years, from I would say 29 and a half when I met Rudolf Steiner's work till I was 35. And in that process, this work by Mabel Collins, Light on the Path, and also the Buddha Eightfold exercises, also known as the daily exercises, were my accompaniment. And I would say for Easter, for me, there was suffering, deep suffering that you can't even imagine. And at maybe 31 or 32, I decided to ask if I could understand the pain of Christ, which is pretty a pretty awful thing to ask, actually, you know, not knowing where that would take you. But Dennis Kloschek says, when you're working with my Kayal, you need to strap in. And so the Buddha Eightfold Practice for me was a fundamental one. I would offer what Rudolf Steiner shares, it's connected to our chakras. And that if any petal of these chakras is not fully transformed, brought aright, then the chakra itself will not work. The chakra itself will maybe light, but then it will not be able to turn. It will not be able to move. So the picture for me with the daily eightfold path, this Buddha path, was an experience of, if I have this question of how can I understand the pain of Christ, then I have to be able to withstand the pain of Christ. And I have to, which I can't, but I have to find a way at the same time to understand from this eightfold path how I can be in the imitation of Christ, which is love. And so I would offer this work that you friends have been doing all week long. I've been doing it since I've been about 31 every day. And some of the things that stand out for me, I would offer on the Saturday, which is the spleen, we're looking at forgoing all assent and still more all unfavorable judgments, even in our thoughts and feelings. On Sunday, we're looking at, and that was right opinion, right judgment, having been formed independently of sympathies and antipathies. And on Monday, the reproductive organ day, we're looking at all talking for the sake of talking, to kill time is in this sense harmful. For Tuesday, the gallbladder, because these chakras are also connected to our organs, which is also connected in our higher sense to our etheric body as we transform and etherize our blood. On Tuesday, we have, when an occasion calls for action out of one's own inner being, deliberate carefully how we can best meet the occasion for the good of the whole, the lasting happiness of humanity, the eternal. And that's right deed. On Wednesday has to do with the lungs, to look on life as means towards working towards higher development and to behave accordingly. Thursdays, the liver, to look beyond the everyday, the momentary, and to set oneself aims and ideas connected with the highest duties of a human being. And all of our experiences, all our exercises now become a habit. On Friday, the kidneys, Venus. If one has done something wrongly or imperfectly, that becomes a motive for doing it rightly or more perfectly later on. If one sees others doing something, one observes them with the like end in view, yet not coldly or heartlessly. And then there's a summary that every day we take 5 minutes to weigh up our principles, our values, how we are with the other. And I would offer that what I began to understand out of How to Know Higher Worlds, and also this work with the Buddha Eightfold Path, was that it brought me directly into relationship with the other human being. And if the deed of Christ is an objective deed, Rudolf Steiner says, in the occult significance of the blood, if it is an objective deed, as Lucifer was an objective deed. Pardon me one moment, someone has just come. Hey, Brett.
This happens a lot in elderberries. It's a cultural center, so we're always having people coming in and out, and that's the beauty of the space there.
Well, we had an anthroposophic friend who just walked in, and he's carrying a heart. So I thought, oh, I can't let him go. So I would just offer, hello, friend. Welcome. If you want to grab a chair, there's a chair around if you like. Or they're not meeting in here. They're actually online. Yeah, pardon me, yeah. Thank you, friends, for your patience. So to just give an example of that moment, like we would stop everything at the Elderberries Cafe to meet the other. It wouldn't matter who it was or what it was, or if there was a disturbance in the cafe, everything would stop so that we could meet the other and immediately meet what had to be transformed. It wasn't a question of letting a seed burrow within us. It was a matter of meeting it objectively, not subjectively, meeting it objectively to the best of our ability and transforming and redeeming that moment right there and then. So the cafe is a space where young people come from around the world. We work with homeless youth and adults with special needs. We created the space so that the graduating Waldorf youth would come together with the at-risk youth. And thank you, make some room here. And in that process, what's happening is mostly they come at 21. And what they're mainly looking for, what we offer is a space to unfold their prenatal pictures. And at that age of 21, what we know already from Steiner's work, Rudolf Steiner's work, is that our habits have already been ingrained in us. Our feelings are firing our habits. So we have this process where if we don't take our being in hand, then what can happen is that we're just really speaking out of our feelings. We're just speaking unconsciously about things. And I would say, generally speaking, it's my, one of the things in the cafe is that you cannot, the last thing you sign for is gossip is grounds for dismissal, even listening to it. And the tragedy for me in the Anthroposophical Society a little bit is that the picture what Rudolf Steiner shares is that we have this imagination of community above, Christ within. So he brings that in the lecture of Occult Significance of Blood. So community above, Christ within. And so this picture of the responsibility we have to the Christ, not just on the holy days, not just with the friends we like or the things we agree or don't agree with, but with the whole world, with every human being we meet. So, for example, I would offer, well, I'll read this quote that I love from the Anthroposophic movement. This was a lectures in June of 1923, 6 months before the Christmas conference, Christmas Foundation meeting. And he was at a deep tragedy in that he had to tell the young people and the older people that they had to split, that there was no way that they could find each other. And he felt it was one of the hardest things he said that I had to do to recommend was like, yes, I believe you have to form another group. And in this lecture, in chapter 8, we find, actually chapter 7, it's a little strange how the chapters go back and forth on one another. It's an interesting book, but he was speaking about the Theosophical Society and was speaking about the first object was to build universal fraternity among humankind without reference to race, nationality, and so on. And he goes on to say, it is of course important that such an object should exist, but it has to be lived. It must gradually become a reality. That will happen if anthroposophy itself is seen as a living, supersensory, invisible being who moves about anthroposophis. Then there might be less talk about fraternity and universal human love, but these objects might be more active in human hearts. And then it will be evident in the tone in which people talk about their relation to anthroposophy and how they talk to one another. That is important to them, that they too are followers of this invisible being, anthroposophia. So this picture I have for us, dear friends, for many years I've been wanting to, since I encountered anthroposophy, which was about 8 years after meeting Rudolf Steiner's work, because I didn't know there were Waldorf schools. I didn't know there were people that gathered. That I wanted to bring forth I thought it was so harsh because of how I found it to be so mean, so hard with one another. I didn't understand. And I thought that the Daily Buddha Eightfold Path was something that was missing. I knew everybody was speaking about the basic six, you know, the etheric body, forming our habits, looking at our habits. But something was missing, I experienced. And I experienced that it was this kind of responsibility to the other one, of watching our judgments, or what we say about each other, or how we hold each other, and how we have certain communities. And yet Christ came for all of humanity. And looking at the task of anthroposophists, it felt that that could be helpful. So in elderberries, we could say, and how I began my exercise was about gladly being silent. I've become so silent I never speak anymore, very rare, but gladly being silent. So at the end of the day, I had to say to my partner, hey, I did my exercise today. And he said, oh, what was it? And I said, oh, to be gladly silent. And he looked at me and said, you must be kidding me. And I was like, no, that was my exercise. So I could realize through being with another human being and in being that kind of vulnerable space to say, how was I in working what I was working on today, that allowed me to have a real right relationship to truth of how another person experiences me, not just how I experience myself and what I think I have to work on. And so Rudolf Steiner also brings this up from Jesus to Christ in lecture 9, that it's not about my own self-development for myself. It's actually, how can I serve the Christ? And by serving the Christ, I serve other human beings. By serving other human beings, I serve the Christ. And what does that look like as a daily practice, as a daily exercise? So the young people that come, they get to work on those areas, and we use the Buddha Eightfold Path, and it's on our menu. It's also written on our walls. And our menus were disappearing all the time. So what we experience, for example, to be able to speak truth to the double, not just me saying, oh, I have a double and I'm working on that, but actually the other person who has experience of your double, being able to share, hey, that doesn't feel so beautiful. Can we have a conversation about that? So what I have found through the process of doing this with young people is that they're actually finding a way to have their I stand. What I find doing this with older people, I would say 40 and older, extremely difficult, almost impossible. And so the young people having to speak to the elder people to be able to say, hey, are we gossiping right now? Or, hey, do you think we should have someone else in the room when we talk about this? It's really crucial. And for a young person to be able to say, and an older person say, well, my mother taught me how to bake. I don't need you to tell me how to bake. Thank you anyway. And then for me, that young person to be able to say, hey, I don't feel that you're so open right now. I don't know how to meet you. I feel like you just slapped me. So I would offer, this is what the Buddha Eightfold Path, the daily exercises, which we've been saying them, I've been saying them since I've been about 30, maybe 35. We say them every day at the cafe. And we also do the Foundation Stone meditation rhythms, and also the daily verse. And these are with young people that have nothing to do with anthroposophy. They didn't come in knowing anthroposophy, and those that didn't want anything to do with it. But they found through the Buddha Eightfold Practice, which is our fundamental way of being, that they were empowered to share how I experienced this moment. And not looking at what the other person did to me is another part. Is actually, this is not about what they did to you. You yourself. What did you do? What did you do to help cause this? And so I would say that these pictures here of bringing the Buddha Eightfold Path together with the Sixfold Path, what we know from etherization of the blood, from Florin Lowndes, enlivening the chakra of the heart, this has to do with unfolding our etheric heart. So when we are able to be accountable and open and work with these exercises, we're working with our organs, we're working with our chakras. And each of them have a petal. And in the Eightfold Path, you'll find in the chakras and How to Know Higher Worlds what each of these petals signifies. And this is how then our lights shine and then they move. And many of you already know this. The picture of how am I every day? How can I transform myself so that I can serve the Christ? So I would say that's the fundamental picture for me. I realize actually right now, I don't think I finished reading the quote, but that's the fundamental picture for me of what these Buddha Eightfold exercises offer our daily lives. And that if we could take them into our communities with one another, that when you have a study group and some people are gossiping about somebody else in the group, you know, that's an opportunity to say, hey, to be empowered to say, hey, I don't feel so comfortable with that right now. Would you like support to speak with so-and-so? And if we do that in the beginning, the seed doesn't set for discontent in our communities. It doesn't set within us. It's an immediate turnaround, immediate. So I can say, I can release it immediately, that it doesn't have any space in me anymore. And so this would be the question, this would be the thought I would offer friends for the Buddha Eightfold practice, a daily practice, and to be able to do it in community and with each person that you meet. Each person, every single human being, an objective Christ. I got that. Okay, next. What does that look like? And I would say the final thing we say in elderberries is no suffering for suffering's sake. So no suffering for suffering's sake. I need to learn something from it. And I don't need to learn something about the other person. I need to learn it about myself, not about the other person. And so we hold a really fine line in the elderberries. Like, no, that's about him. Can we just talk about you? Can you? So I will offer this quote that I didn't finish reading. I don't believe I finished reading it. I did finish reading it. Okay. So that's what I want to offer. For me, the Buddha Eightfold Path has been a saving grace and has led me in connection to the picture of trying to be in the imitation of Christ with my eye, and how I can create no space for harm, only for healing, to the best of my ability. So yeah, I would offer that. Thank you so much, dear Hazel. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Dottie. Hi, Nicholas. Yeah. Do any friends out in the ethersphere have a question or some love they want to throw at Dottie here for these amazing, this is an amazing journey to be on, because as human beings, we do have to make these things practical. It's not just reading something in a book. It's living in the social sphere where we practice these things. And that's how we meet the Christ.
So 2 things, if I can say, friends, quickly, I'm sorry. One is March, magnanimity becomes love. And in April, we have devotion becomes the power of sacrifice. So in both of those, what I want to pose a question to you, friends, I pose to myself, looking at what my word is, and my closest colleague, what his word is. And so the virtues have this magnanimity question. Am I being magnanimous? But it's not a magnanimous without my eye. I'm magnanimous with knowing who I am and what I'm choosing right now. And how can I be? And how can the other be free? So that's the one thing. And I would just offer, maybe there's an exercise that you look at from the daily Eightfold Path and see which one you have to work on the most. Mine has shifted from what I was working on before to what I'm working on now. And that was maybe after 15, 20 years. I worked on the same one for a long time. So I just offer that. What is the virtue maybe that you might want to work with, and work with that word? Rudolf Steiner offers this as an ideal. And then also look at maybe the daily exercises, the Buddha Eightfold Path. And is there one there that you feel especially called to, that there's something in there you need to develop? Okay, thank you so much. Sorry about that, Hila. Thank you.
No, this is it. These are the assignments we give each other to meet ourselves in the other. And I hope that you all come out and meet Dottie at Elderberries. They're going to be opening very soon, the biodynamic hub. So yeah, anybody have a comment or something before we go on?
Thank you, Dottie. So nice to see your face through the internet.
Yeah, and
Good to
of
see you
course,
as well. Thank you.
of course, Ines knows a lot about the biodynamic path. And, you know, she's been working with the bees for a while, and they whisper many things and many secrets to her and give her many tasks that she is taking up so that she can consciously engage with the earth. So not only do we work in the social sphere, we also work right into the soil with this work with biodynamics. But it also, again, it does connect to the soul, the human soul. And so how can we bring that together with the cosmic energies, the earthly energies, and the social energies in this springtime? And so I'll turn it over to Ines. Thank you again, Dottie. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So I was asked to bring an imagination today. If you don't know me, I don't think I know most of you. I did used to live in Chicago until about 7 years ago. Then my son and I moved to Asheville and became part of the Asheville Waldorf School. I teach kindergarten there. And the last few years have been working deeply with bees and biodynamics. I'm a little daughter of the Spikenard Honeybee Sanctuary with Günther and Vivian and Alex. Got to spend a lot of time there and want to give credit for a lot of what I've learned. And also want to say up front, I've been doing a lot of work with Karsten Massé from Switzerland. Been doing translating work for him, with him, doing different workshops for the last few years and translated some of his written work. So I think there's a lot of, these are things that have just very positively influenced me. And just in the last, within the last few months, found a little piece of earth to steward. It's just north of Asheville, 35 minutes in Tennessee, just across the state line, in the Cherokee National Forest, 40 acres in the mountains, to become the Emerald Ark, which is a little biodynamic sanctuary for bees and plants and people. It's in its very beginning stages. So a lot of love is appreciated. You can send love to the Emerald Ark. And this year, early in the year, I felt really strongly that I wanted to create a little festival here locally, just a small one. And then we also took it online, and there was a lot of interest celebrating Candlemas with the bees and seeing what the bees can teach us about our inner festival life. And Hazel came, and that's when she asked me if I wanted to come be part of your Easter celebration. So I'm so grateful that you invited me. Thank you. So again, this is not going to be a technical talk in any sort of way. You might think that at times I ought to be choosing different words or whatnot, and I'm just going to ask you to pretend like you're a child and listen to what I'm saying as if you were listening to a fairy tale or somebody telling a story, and just clear your mind of what you already know, and then we'll go from there. So if you have a beeswax candle, before you light it, I'm going to, and I'm not going to screen share much, by the way. I'm going to put a few pictures up here and there, but it's actually more important, I think, that you stay grounded. And if that means away from the computer, or even looking away, or, you know, putting the computer to the side and just being comfortable, that's fine. So just so you know, nothing I'm putting on the screen is so crucial that you have to be looking at the screen. If you would be rather just listening. But before you light your beeswax candle, I am going to put a little picture. And this is a picture of the belly of a honeybee. And these little tiny crystalline looking structures there are wax platelets. And each bee, and they're tiny. If you've ever seen one, they're like this tiny. They're almost translucent. And each bee can create 8 little wax platelets a day. So when we have a chunk of beeswax or a beeswax candle, then that's a lot of little tiny wax platelets. And as we dive into finding out more about the bee, you may realize more and more what a sacred substance this is. But I just would like to acknowledge that this is where beeswax comes from. So that being said, you may now hold that in your heart and light your candle, and we will begin on our journey into the world of the bee. Why do we want to carry a festival life in our rhythm, in our body, in what we do? I've spoken to a lot of people over the last couple of years, and that's taken me closer and closer to really wanting to concern myself with the festival life in the relation to the bee. And one of the things that I hear often is that it seems like it has become more and more difficult for people to really feel deeply connected to the festival year. And there are lots of different reasons. One is that it might be a loss of connection to our ancestral traditions. This thought that it has to be a very religious thing. And if somebody didn't grow up in a particular tradition or religion, that's sometimes a little bit hard to find. It could also be, and I think this may be the most common, that just the pace of everyday life, of our modern busyness, that even festivals, and I've even experienced this at our Waldorf School, sometimes can be taken up by busy work and creating some sort of production, right? And so I would like to bring a picture about the festival life before we dive into our journey with the bee. Just to consider that we all are born with a festival life, that it's not something we have to find, that it's something that is in us because we are whole and we are in wholeness with nature. So the festival life, as you know, came before all religions. The festival life of the earth was present before all traditions. The festival life is rooted in the breathing of the earth and her kingdoms. So that's all we need. Except now we are also in a time where we may have to assume a little bit more responsibility when it comes to the festival life. So the question is, what is asked of us? And last year, for St. John's, we were at Spikenard, just a few of us to gather. And one of the questions we asked was, what is the task of our festival life? And for years I had this image, and maybe some of you share this, that no matter what our tradition, the festival times are like nodal points where we actually have a chance for renewal by realigning ourselves with the rhythms of the earth. And it is through our conscious attention that we can do that. And the picture that I always had was this golden stream coming through my center, just going right through the center of the earth. It's as if I can go right through the center of the earth. And here I am, realigned. Now, what came up last year at St. John's as we were working together was that, is it just a one-way street? Is it that we as human beings have a chance to realign ourselves with this strong, ever-present rhythm that we are born into? Or is it maybe a two-way street? That our festival life also gives a chance for realignment for the beings around us. And when we look out into the world, I believe that we may experience some chaos. One could look at the weather, the climate, so many different things give us this indication that it's jumbled up out there. And maybe, just as an example, I have a close friend, Danilo. He's a beekeeper in Costa Rica. And they used to have a wet season and a dry season. So the bees knew, they could prepare for the dry season, because of course they can't fly out much when it's raining, like monsoon type of rains. And now those seasons really aren't anymore. They're very mixed together, and often it just rains and rains and rains. And it's affecting the plant life and of course the bees and the animals. And that just as an example. And what became really apparent to me was that, and again, this is within me, and you have to ask yourself this question for yourself, but that maybe we have reached a point in our development as free-thinking human beings, where it is up to us to work consciously during the festival time, being a nodal point, not just orienting ourselves and thinking of us receiving this renewal, but also maybe asking, who is orienting to me? Who is orienting to us? The countless beings of the earth's kingdoms. Yeah. And to cultivate such a festival life, the honeybee is a great being that can teach us, because for as mysterious as she is, the parts that we do see and can observe in the physical world, in addition to doing more super sensible experiencing, but even just what we see of her life in the physical world, is the most complete, or is, I don't know, maybe I can't say the most, but maybe one of the most complete representations of the festival life as something that we can observe. So she can be like a mirror to us, for us to develop that strength of rhythm inside of us. So, I'm going to take you for a few minutes through the life of a hive in the year. And then we will go to a small artistic exercise. One more thing I want to say before I begin, and this is really more of an acknowledgement than anything. There's a big dog behind me that just started dreaming, making noises. Is that what I describe is really the life, the birthright life of a honeybee. And I do want to acknowledge that at least 95% of living hives right now are denied their birthright of a natural life and evolution and procreation. That's another subject, but it's just something to hold, for us to hold. All right, so let's begin. As you know, each hive is one being, in biology often called a superorganism, but it's one being made of lots of little bees, thousands and thousands of little bees. And none of those bees could live on their own. They only exist within the being of the hive. And in the hive, we find three different types of honeybees. One is, of course, the queen. The queen, there's only one. And then there are the worker bees. And those are the ones that we see flying around visiting flowers. They're the ones collecting pollen and nectar. They are the ones that express the wax, like that little bee I just showed you. And then there are the drones. The drones are the male bees. They're like the little fuzzy teddy bear bees. They're sometimes very big, and they have lots of little hairs all over their body. And they don't sting. They also, hold on one second. Am I intending a screen share? Nope, I am not. Sorry. I am just sometimes maybe going to put a little picture, but right now just in your imagination. So drones are little fuzzy bees, and yeah, thank you. It's best probably not to chat unless it's really important, because I have trouble multitasking if I'm trying to talk. And if we look at the hive as a threefold organism, thinking of what would be the rhythmic system and what is the nerve sense system and the will forces. Of course, I used to think that the queen must be the heart, right? The queen it's all about the queen. But what I actually came to over time working with bees is that the queen is the creative will force in the hive, and the worker bees are actually the heart and the rhythmic system, and the drones, the nerve sense system. So interestingly enough, the drones, they are the ones, they do not even live in one particular hive. They come back to a hive, But all day, they are visiting other hives, and they really know what's going on everywhere. They do fertilize a queen during a marriage flight, which I'll get to later. And the worker bees in the hive are the ones that are truly always taking care of everything and knowing exactly, even though the queen lays the eggs, the worker bees know exactly what size of comb to build, whether it's for honey or for brood of worker bees or drones. And they can regulate, just like the rhythmic system, everything in the hive. They can regulate the temperature inside a hive just by their one little opening that might be to the entire hive body. They can have a little air conditioning system going where they gather water and they bring it to the entrance, and then they fan their little wings to create a draft of cool, moist air. It's incredible. But those are the worker bees. And then the queen, being the creative force of the hive, is very interesting, carries, in a sense, both the masculine and feminine aspects within herself. So the queen is fertilized only one time, and a true natural honey queen, meaning she was raised by bees and not by humans, can live for 5 to 6 years. So she mates one time in the beginning, and then she keeps the sperm alive inside of herself for all those years with her own life forces, meaning that she's carrying both the masculine and feminine, right? So those are the inhabitants of the hive. Now, in the height of summer, I'm going to start there so that we can end with Easter. So let's say we're in the summer and the hive is very expanded. The hive is maybe the largest animal on land, because when bees can fly miles, they can fly 3 miles out to go get honey, and get nectar, to make honey. And one must ask, where is the boundary, right? Is the boundary the box? If the life of the bee is so much farther. So during the summer, the bee is very expanded and covers a huge radius. And there are many worker bees, and there are also many drones, like I was saying earlier. And as the fall comes and the days get shorter, the hive slowly begins to contract, meaning the bees fly less distances. They are a little bit closer to home. And also less honeybees are born. The brood nest becomes a little smaller. And eventually, the drones are no longer fed. So one thing I didn't mention is the little drones, the male bees, they cannot do any of the work. They cannot even feed themselves. They must be fed by a female worker bee. And eventually the drones are, people say the drones are kicked out. It's a little funny. And if one were to look at the bees as little individuals instead of one big organism, people may even feel sorry for the drones. Like they're getting kicked out of the house, but they're not. It's part of the natural development. Because then later on, when it's close to, when the bees get closer to the winter cluster, what actually happens is that there's one more little brood, and I'm speaking of a climate like ours right now where there's an actual winter, right? And those are the bees that will not leave the hive, right? They will just be the winter cluster. And those worker bees actually live the longest. Most worker bees only live for about 6 weeks or so, 8 weeks max. But the ones that are in the winter brood, that are born right before winter, will live for up to 5 months to get the hive and the queen through the winter. And in the winter time, something very beautiful happens. The bees cluster up, and the cluster is actually like a spiral. They're together in a spiral. The queen is in the very middle, and they spiral in this perfect spiral on their honeycomb. And in their hive, there is the golden honey. I don't think we'll have much time to talk about honey today. But I'll just say that honey is a combination of the highest love of the plants and the light of the inner earth. The bees have a strong connection with. It's all manifest in this honey. It's an inner light. It's a sun inside the hive. And the actual temperature drops in the hive as they are clustered in, close to this light of the honey. And the bees feed each other, right? So the ones that are closest to the honey take from the honey, and they keep passing it all around this spiral until it gets to the queen in the middle. And they do this, and they are fed by feeding each other in this spiral. And that's what the winter cluster is like. And if we've not taken the honey away from them and fed them sugar water instead or something, then that's just the way it's meant to be. And then spring comes. See, so spring comes, and slowly there is an impulse of expansion. And what begins to happen is that as soon as the bees can fly out, they have a cleansing flight, and they begin to bring in pollen. And with pollen and water, they make a little fermented substance. They call it bee bread, and it's actually there to feed the brood, because now they have started a brood nest, and they're beginning to raise little bees again. And let's see. And then as the nectar flow begins, with the trees blossoming and some of the spring flowers, the hive actually expands very rapidly. And they can go, and the hive can go from a few thousand bees to 30,000 bees very quickly, or more, depending on how large the hive cavity is. And then close to Easter is when, in most regions, the swarming season starts. And so I'm going to describe a swarm because that's where we are. Last year, I witnessed a swarm happening the night before Easter, and we named her Ostara. She was a magical, huge, incredible being that landed in a tree and weathered a storm of 60-mile-an-hour winds up in a tree. She was up there for 9 days. But anyway, that's another story. So what happens within the hive is this impulse of a birth. Yes, swarming is the way a hive procreates, but it's very different. And this is where I invite you to let an inner image arise of what is happening, because it mirrors the Easter renewal. So within the hive, the bees know, or the hive knows, that it is now time to create another queen. So they begin to build what's called a queen cup. And a queen cup is a little wax cell that's very different from the hexagonal horizontal cells. So if you've ever looked at bee honeycomb, you'll see that there are tons of little hexagonal cells, and they're all horizontal in a sense, right? You can look right into them when you take honeycomb out. A queen cell is the opposite. It's round, it's not hexagonal, and it's always directed vertically toward the sun. So, and when the old queen comes and lays an egg in there, this particular egg, and then larva, is treated very differently from the other brood. And Steiner describes in his bee lectures that the bees begin to sense a different light. So if you look at a bee, the bee has big eyes, right? Big eyes here on the side. And then there are 3 little tiny dots on the top of the bee's head. And those are also little eyes, but they're not eyes that the bee would, for example, see a flower with. These eyes the bee begins to sense a light as the new queen develops. And the way Steiner describes it is that even while the bee is still in the cell, even the new queen is still in the queen cup cell, it begins to emit a light. And then all of the bees in the colony, drones and workers, orient to either the new queen or the old queen. The ones that orient to the old queen because the new light, the light from the new queen, becomes unbearable to them. That's how he describes it. That it is not, they know that's not my queen. So either right before the queen is born or right after she is born, the old queen leaves the hive and takes about half the bees with her. And if you've ever witnessed a swarm or been in one, meaning in one, it's all around you, it's one of the most incredible things to witness. It's so incredible. I personally always have tears in my eyes. It's very similar to me, a similar feeling to watching a baby being born. There's definitely something that happens. And it brings renewal, not just to the hive that swarms out, but also to the hive within, having the new queen. Now, when they swarm, it is this incredible moment of thousands and thousands of bees coming out of the hive at once, and it looks kind of chaotic, but when you pay attention, you realize it really isn't. And eventually the old queen comes out and she lands on a branch somewhere, and there they all cluster together. And this is an incredible moment because it is, they are without their hive body. The queen never leaves the hive except for on her marriage flight, or for swarming. And one thing that we can imagine is that even though we think it's dark inside the hive, for the bees it's reversed. The light is inside the hive and it's dark outside. So the queen flies out and she tries to fly as high as she can toward the sun, which is part of her renewal. This is part of swarming. And then scout bees will fly out. They look for different cavities, different habitats, and eventually they choose one. This is what would happen if they were doing it on their own, right? And they come back and they do little dances on the top of the other bees in the cluster. And when you watch, you can see it just moving, and they know, and suddenly they take off and they all go to that one direction and move right into their new home. And in the hive that stays behind, here we have the new queen. And in about within the first 3 days or so, unless it's really bad weather, the queen will do what they call her marriage flight. And that is, she flies out and flies to what they call a drone congregation area, which is really a magical place in the sky because nobody knows how they know where to go. But she flies so high, accompanied with by a few worker bees, so far beyond what our naked eye can see. And up there in one particular place where they exactly know where they're going to be are many drones from many different hives. And she mates with them, multiple drones, and then, as long as nothing happens, carries that back into the hive. And here they are. So that is the swarm. And that is the most expanded part. The queen's marriage flight is the most expanded part of the life of a hive. And it happens around Easter. Or one could say Easter is usually the beginning of a swarming time, right? So in your imagination, what happens with this birthing renewal? And we'll just take a little time, just let, you can turn away from the screen. And if you have your paper and colored pencils or whatever it is you have available, it can be just a little sketch. If you want to, you can take some of your honey, if you have real honey, and just, take a little of that and then make a drawing of what image arises for you of the Easter renewal. We'll just take a few minutes for that.
I finished to draw my bee color so she'd come. So Ground hasn't finished yet.
You want to show her?
Look,
Thank you. Thank you for showing me.
she will come to me if she sees this. She'll go, is that me? And she will, is that my bee home? She'll be very, very happy. And I draw the trees and put in her bee house. She's flying to her bee house. So she's happy. And she's happy. She's home.
Okay, say bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. All right, friends, let's keep going. And I'll just keep going for a little bit, but if there's time at the end, I guess Hazel will let me know. And also cut me off anytime, by the way, Hazel or whoever else is in charge, because I can keep going for a long time about bees. I'll say a few more things about the bee on the not physical level or realm, right? The bee is not fully born. There's a part of the bee that always remains not incarnated in the physical, which means that the bee has a very close relationship to the cosmos, even more so than she does to the earth. So working closely with the bee brings us into a feeling for the cosmic rhythms. As I said before, the bee also has a very strong connection to the center of the earth, the golden center of the earth, bringing the light from the center of the earth into the honey. Everything in the landscape is within the bee. And the bee interacts with the landscape, transforming the shadows in the landscape, specifically impurities that we may have created, are transformed within the bee. We are also a landscape to the bee. The way the bee perceives us, the bee can transform impurities or shadows in us. We could say shining light or bringing light to the shadows. I want to, for a moment, go to this task of ours, this festival life task. And Dottie was saying earlier about this pain experience during Easter time. It's really interesting. I'm imagining right now all of us just sitting in a circle. Zoom is a little funny sometimes that way, right? Like, I wish we were all just sitting in a circle, and then I could just say, you know, last night my dreams were really intense, and it took me a long time to shake it off this morning. Really coming into the presence of a lot of shadows. See, Steiner said, if you've read the Bee lectures, he said that every human being ought to be caring about the life of the bees or the honeybee, because our life depends on the bee more than we know, right? And I think it's safe to say that he was not just talking about pollination. That later on in his lectures, in the last lecture, because the 9 lectures are actually 8 lectures plus a little compilation. In the last lecture, he goes into the importance of formic acid. And what he describes is the oxalic acid, formic acid cycle that the bees have with the plant world. This goes so much further than pollination, and I know, we might hear in the news, oh, the bees and what's going to happen with pollination and what's going to happen with our food supply. But if we act like pollination is the main thing, then we might take this in the whole wrong direction. I don't know if you know, but there have been some little robotic bees are already being made. They're called drones because they're like tiny little robot things. And in areas where there aren't any bees, and they fly these little things to the flowers and they manually pollinate. But if we think that's the future, or that's the answer, I think we've got it. We've got it majorly wrong. The oxalic acid, formic acid cycle. I mean, one could do a whole presentation on just this, but a quick way to describe it is that through an exchange, it's something that happens when the bee and the flowers touch. And when the bees fly through the landscape, it helps, the way Steiner put it, the spirit stay incarnate in the physical. And it is what actually brings the life of the plant to flowering. If there's a breakdown in the formic acid, oxalic acid cycle, what would happen is after a while, we would still have leaf growth, but the plants would never reach a seeding stage. They would never be able to produce fruit and seed. Because again, this brings up, well, what is the seed? When we're speaking of the spirit being incarnate in the physical, right? So if the seed, I don't have to say more about that. It's crucial. But he also it brings attention to that, we actually have a formic acid, oxalic acid cycle in our own body that is very much a representation of this. Meaning we have the most formic acid we have present in our body is actually at birth, when our spirit comes into the body and we begin to incarnate. And the least amount of formic acid we have at the end of life, when we're beginning to excarnate and our spirit is ready to exit the body, right? So if you hold an image for a moment of our world, yeah, we're all in this together. Mm-hmm. Whether it's through the bee, she's here to help with finding this inner festival life, or another path that you found. Maybe we can look at finding festival life not just in creating rhythm, but also recognizing our own importance in the wholeness of it all. If you've seen a medicine wheel, for example, that's a wonderful image of a representation of the kingdoms of the earth. It's an easy thing for us to write ourselves out of the wholeness, because that's what's being, that's the constant message that we're given, right? We're part of this twofold lie, where part of that lie is that somehow we don't have a place in this wholeness. And the second one is that we are destined for doom. It's in most of the media and most of the movies, most of what people absorb, that this is, you know, we are on a self-destruction path, and might as well accept it and desensitize ourselves to that, right? And also this whole notion that, you know, the world would just be better off if we just weren't here to destroy it anymore. You know, we've messed it all up. So gosh, if we just got rid of human beings, then the world could recover or something, right? This is a very prevalent message. But we will never be able to have a full festival life or bring any healing to the earth unless that image and the feeling of wholeness is restored inside of us. So just imagine for a moment again that wheel of life and the kingdoms of mineral, plant, animal, and human, right? Being one wholeness in harmony with their heavenly hierarchies. And this is a good meditative exercise or something you can play around with. It's just asking yourself, for example, or saying, you know, the plant life, the plants could not exist without the minerals, and the minerals could not exist without the plants. No resistance there, right? That feels right. Yes, the animals could not live without the plants, and the plants could not live without the animals. We all know that, no problem, right? But the moment you begin to say something like, well, human beings couldn't live without the plants. True, definitely, right? But the plants could not live without the human being. You know, there we rub up against something, or most of us do. I'm not speaking for everyone, but, you know, or the animals couldn't live out without the human beings. Ooh, you know, this is not congruent with the message that we're hearing on a daily basis. So to begin to imagine images of wholeness, and images, having an inner image of where the human being is written into that equation. And you can do this in your own ways, but this is just one way to begin to explore where you're at with that inner picture. I'll read one of the 24 initiation verses. If you're in the Karsten's current course, then you already know this one, but I'll also, it's not something I can share via the internet, so I'll put it up on the screen for you. It's actually, interestingly enough, the very first verse out of 24. So it all begins with wholeness, right? Receive yourself as the one who you are in an everyday act of saying yes to yourself, your path, your existence, the gift being that you are, that you will be. For wholeness is in you. For whole you are. For wholeness goes out from you. Know this, live this, receive this out of the hands of the high spirits of the earth. So if we go back to this idea that in our festival life, it is our consciousness that becomes an orienting pillar to the beings around us, then it may become clear that is actually this healing, this coming into wholeness is a crucial aspect in order for us to be that light, to be a point of breathing for the earth. And it's something we have to practice, because the festival rhythm is not just about, celebrating particular points in the year. It is actually about holding this picture of who we are, not just holding the picture, but actually feeling it. Practicing it enough that we know it. And think of riding a bike. So this is something that I have it in my mind, like it's like riding a bike. And, riding a bike is all about finding the balance. You're wiping out until you have found that balance. But anybody who knows how to ride a bike knows that the moment you felt that balance, it's a visceral experience. And then after that, you can go back on the bike anytime. It could be years of you not riding a bike, but you can then go back and you feel it. So that's, cultivating a feeling of wholeness, of us being part of nature, is of utmost importance. Right now, with what we're seeing out in the world, it's the counter image, right? It's the counter image of what's happening in the world, in the grand scheme of things, which is a grasp of the total, this barreling towards a grasp for the total mechanization of nature, as if there is not an innate wisdom in nature, as if we are against it and it is against us. When we first begin to cultivate this feeling of wholeness, that's our starting point. And going back to the bees for just a moment, Steiner also said about formic acid that formic acid carries the wisdom of nature. So that's how there can be so much organization in a hornet or wasp colony, or a bee colony, or in an ant colony. They all know what to do. And he even used the example that if your business would be on top of a lot of ant hills, things would go really in a lot more organized, wise manner. I think I need to stop, don't I? Yeah, I need to bring it to a close. So one more thing. Over the last year, we've interacted a lot with the screens, with the computers, with the machine, with the artificial intelligence. And again, it's not like the wisdom that's carried by the formic acid, right? It's important for us to keep in mind that when we are interacting with the machine, there is no heart space, right? We are now in a twofold. The answer is you cannot find those 24 verses. Just the one, copy it down. We'll talk at another time. But the machine will never have a heart. It is not a threefold being. So when we are interacting with the machine or through the machine, it is so important to be aware of our own heart space. When we're aware of our own heart space, which is like our little beehive, our part that is connected to the sun and to the center of the earth, then we can go from there. If you have that image of the representative of man, the machine can't, otherwise the machine takes the heart forces if we do not have an awareness of that. But cultivating that feeling of balance, staying really aware of our own heart forces, it then leads to uprightness. And in this uprightness, we can be with the bee, right? The earth can breathe through us, through our heart, and we are achieving what the bee is showing us. And just for Easter here, I will read one more verse. I'll put it on the screen, but do your best to listen and copy, I suppose. Who stands upright before evil transforms, because one carries the load of the shadows into the lightness of one's innermost heart. Who stands upright is light. Who looks on does not judge. Who accepts does not push away. And who seeks inner freedom sets free. That's all I have, friends. And actually, I apologize. I shouldn't say you can't find these verses. You just can't find them in English. But I can, if you copy, you're allowed to copy them down when I'm sharing them. They just can't be shared on the internet or anything like that. They are in German in a book, but yeah, well, we can talk about that another day.
Thank you, Ines. What a powerful picture to live into at this time. Yeah, I'm throbbing. I feel the beehive in my heart. You've really planted it there. And you know, eurythmy and arts are the perfect opportunity to bring this folic acid out into the world, because it's a real healing impulse, and it really helps us to live into these things. And so I'm going to ask Mary Rue to bring us the Rock Spring Wonder in eurythmy. And then Ines, if you can stay maybe a little bit, we might go a little bit over for people that want to have some question time with you and maybe help to digest all that you've brought us. That would really be appreciative. But I think we should do this eurythmy. I think it's a powerful way of integrating all that we've received so far. So Mary, welcome. But you have to unmute, dear.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ines. Thank you, Daddy. Thank you, Hazel. So what I was going to do is share the story and bring the eurythmy out of the story from the Rock Spring Wonder. But I thought, shouldn't we stand up and have a stretch? So much content to bring into our hearts. So if we could stand up and have a good stretch, right? And a little bit of breathing in and out. Yeah, with our arms, reach out, breathing air in. Yeah, reach into your environment, breathe in light, and reach into your environment, breathe in warmth, and whatever other stretches you need to do to feel yourself upright. And I'm actually going to sit down for the story and have the book in case I need a little help. So this is the story Rock Spring Wonder, and it's told by Felicia Balda in the second mystery drama. And it's told to Capesius, who has just had a shattering experience. And he comes to her for a healing story to try to pull himself back together. And I think you'll see in the story how she does that. It's a very beautiful story, The Rock Spring Wonder. And she starts by saying, "So be it. Once upon a time, there was a boy, the only child of a poor forester, who lived in a woodland solitude. He knew besides his parents hardly any other people. His build was slender, his skin almost transparent. One could look long into his eyes, they held the deepest spirit wonders. And though few people entered the circle of his life, he never was in need of friends. In the nearby mountains, the golden sunlight gleamed and glimmered. The boy would draw the light with his rapt, musing eye into his heart until his soul resembled the morning brightness of the sun. But when through darkening clouds the morning sunlight could not pierce, the boy's eye too grew dull. A mood of sadness filled his heart. The spirit weaving of his narrow world took a hold of him so fully that it was no less strange to him than were his body and his limbs. The trees and flowers were all his friends. There spoke to him from crown and calyx and from the lofty treetops, spirit beings, and what they whispered he could understand. Such wondrous things unfolded before the boy whenever he conversed with what most people thought was lifeless. In evening, his parents sometimes missed their beloved child. The boy was at a spring nearby, where from the rocks the water burst forth. Water drops dispersing thousandfold were scattered over rocks. When in moonlight's glimmer and sparkling color sorcery, the moon was mirrored in the water's misty spray, he could sit for hours on end beside the rock-born spring. And figures formed by spirit magic arose before his youthful vision in rushing water and in moonlight's glimmer. They grew into 3 women's forms who told him of those things to which his soul's desire was turned. One gentle evening, as he sat by the spring again, one woman of the 3 caught up a myriad of drops and passed them to the second woman. She fashioned from the tiny drops a chalice with a silver gleam and gave it to the third. She filled it with the moonlight's silver rays and gave it to the boy who had beheld all this with youthful inner sight. Now in the night that passed after this event, he dreamed a dream that he was robbed of the chalice by a fierce dragon. Just 3 times more he beheld the wonder of the spring, though he sat there musing in moonlight's silver gleam. When 360 months had passed 3 times, the boy had long become a man and had moved away to a strange city. One night, as he sat pondering what life still had in store for him, he found himself caught up and carried as a boy back to the rock-born spring. And he beheld the water women, but this time he heard them speak. The first one said, "Remember me when you feel alone in life. I lure your eye of soul to starry spaces and ethereal realms. And whosoever wills to feel me, I offer him the draught of hope in life out of my wonder goblet." The second one could be heard. "Do not forget me at the times when courage in your life is threatened. I lure your yearning heart to depths of soul and to spirit height. And whosoever seeks his strength from me, for him I offer the steel of faith in life, shaped by my wonder hammer." The third one could be heard. "To me lift up your eye of spirit when life's riddles overwhelm you. I spin the threads of thought that weave through labyrinths of life and the depths of soul. And whosoever harbors trust in me, for them I weave the wondrous rays of love on my wonder loom." Thus it befell the man. And in the night he had a dream. A fierce dragon prowled all around him, but could not come near him. He was protected by the beings he had seen at the rock-born spring, who with him had left their forest home for this far distant place. So, as we know in the mystery drama, the soul forces follow each character, the thinking, feeling, and willing. And they're there, the same characters, but they're different for each person that they meet in the mystery drama. And there's a gesture in eurythmy, of course, for all of these three soul forces. For feeling, the gesture rises up and releases. And the soul force is philia, the soul force of feeling. All right, so if you want to stand up and feel that, this freedom of feeling streaming through your whole self. Philia, the other hand, philia. The full soul force of thinking is horizontal, goes on forever, shining forehead, sparkling. She actually wears a veil sparkling with sequins. I got to be ostrich once. Ostrich, the right? Spreads out forever. Ostrich, the soul force of thinking, full of love. And then the will is Luna. Ooh, down. If you want to feel this, it's everything below the waist. Try a low L. Luna. The powerful force of willing. So these three characters follow each of the people and offer what they need each time in the mystery drama. So let's look at them again and try the gestures because they really are very freeing, right? Feeling, philia with the E, philia, let it go. Ostrich with horizontal, sparkling, shimmering, thinking, down into the will with Luna, the will. And now these wonderful water women that come out of the rock spring wonder, you can feel they tie these three soul forces back together for Capasius, who's been shattered and his soul forces are broken. And they tie them together with these three great virtues that are brought to us from the Bible and everywhere else: hope, faith, and love. So let's look at that. Hope offers the draft of hope for one who's willing to feel, right? So we have with the hope gesture, which we have gestures for in eurythmy, but first we bring thinking, if you want to, thinking horizontal, thinking, and here it is, feeling, into will. I didn't say that right. I'm sorry. Thinking and willing into the feeling. I'm sorry. Let me do that again. Thinking horizontal. Feel that. Willing in the body, in the body, in the body, into feeling. So out of that, we build this gesture for hope. And these three soul forces, Steiner has given us these healing gestures in eurythmy. And for hope, he gives us the vowel U, as in Luna, right? And it looks like this. You feel a gathering behind you. You lift it up, lift it up, lift it up into thinking, down into the will. Hope, ooh, right? So it is going to be healing into the feeling. So let's try that again. Arms are a little bit behind. Feel gathering. The chalice with its silver gleam. Lift, lift, lift. push the back of your hands together, bring it down into the wheel with a ooh. Luna. Pause. We'll do it 2 more times so you start to feel what it's doing here to the center. The hands behind. Lift, lift, lift. Press your hands together, bring it through into the will. Ooh. Thinking and willing into your feeling. Right, once more. Gather, gather, lift, hope. Ooh. Yeah, we are the chalice. We are the chalice. Faith, right? Feeling meets thinking into the will, right? Feeling, thinking, bring it down into the will, right? Hammer your courage in life, right? Shaped with my wonder hammer, she says, right? Bringing into the will. And faith, we want to feel, what do we have faith in? The spiritual world is behind us, behind us. So we have this horizontal gesture of the thinking with an ah from Astrid. Release it with the feeling and let it go back into the will. Faith that I can stand in life with my spirit behind me, right? So let's try that again, right? Reach out, forward, release behind you, trust behind you. I can trust in that invisible space, right? Once more, reach forward, release into faith and trust. Weaving the soul forces together. So then if we take willing, yeah, down here, feel it, willing, and here's our feeling, and we bring it into thinking. Now remember what she said, when life's riddles overwhelm you, that's in the thinking, right? Your life riddles overwhelm you. I'm going to weave, that's feeling, the rays of love. Bring it back to yourself, on my wonder loom. And the exercise for that we have is love, hey, the healing of our whole circulatory system. Love. So you reach out far, far, far beyond yourself, filled with love. Come back to your heart. Again, out, far beyond yourself, and back to your heart. So you might have been exposed to these 3 soul forces, hope, ooh, love, amazement or wonder, because they've been given over and over and over again for the last year, because they are healing forces for the coronavirus. And that's how most people have been exposed to them. But they're much more than that. They help organize our soul forces. They bring life through our etheric body into our whole being. And the way Steiner describes it in the Rhythmic course isn't so much for the immune system, but to rebuild the whole system, So let's look at them again and see what else they mean to us, right? So if we have the feeling of faith, trust, right? Let's do that one again. Amazement. We reach out forward into the world we see. Release. Trust. Faith. Feel your feet. Yeah. Once more. Reach out. Amazement. And now the wonder of this is, and Hazel and I have spoken about this a lot, is that Steiner also tells us in the lectures about St. Francis, what does faith do? This feeling of wonderment, it redeems our astral body. So let's feel that again. We reach out behind you. So besides being a health practice, which it is, it's also a spiritual growth practice, right? So let's do that once more. Like most things in eurythmy, it has multiple meanings. So let's feel that again. This reaching out into visible space. Let go. Trust. Filled with wonder and amazement. Healing for our astral forces. Right? Love. It's obvious. Steiner tells us love is the great healing force for our life body, our etheric body. And we know that from life experience, how healing love is for our life forces. And we can do it on purpose. Let's reach out sideways. Feel very, very, very big. Like the blood cells, go a little bit beyond yourself. Gather to your heart. Right. Feel your etheric body. Out we go. Beyond ourselves into the periphery. Love. Needs a little pause. Once more. Love. Gather. And if we want to work all the way into the physical body, we have hope, which leads to a sense of conscience, right? So let's do the hope, and feel how deeply it enters your physical body, right? So let's really feel this feeling of hope as we do it. A little bit behind us, find your silver chalice. Feel it, you feel very vulnerable here and open. Lift, press together, and you're going to press right through your body into the physical body. Ooh. And once more, feel the hope behind you. Open chest, open heart. Lift, ground your feet. It's going to go right through you. Press the back of your hands together. Here it comes. And if you want to practice it, you can put the three together in a little pattern. And it's easiest to start with your arms reaching out into love. Make it artistic, right? We reach out into love, a little bit beyond ourselves. Come and gather into your heart. Into the space in front of you. Release. Behind and wonder where you can gather that chalice. Lift. Come right through. Ooh. Down to your feet. Lift. Love. Let it spread. E. Everything in front. Ah. Amazement behind. Everything's open. Gather that chalice. Lift. Come through. Once more, without sound. And turn your back to the screen. I'll say it. Give it a try. Feel your heart. Arms reaching out, out, out. Far to the periphery. Gather. Come back to your heart. E. Reach forward with the ah. See what's in front of you. Wonder, release behind whatever image you have, sunset, sunrise. Gather that chalice behind. Lift. Come through. Whatever you forget, it doesn't matter. Just try, right? Reach out, far, 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 far. Come across the horizon, full of love. Heart, E. Forward, what do you see? Let's trust what's behind. It's wonderful. Let go behind, amazing. Find that chalice behind you. Lift, lift, come down. To your feet. Last time, out into the periphery. Love. Come to your heart. E. Everything you can see in front. Ah. Into the wonderment of it behind. Find that chalice behind. Lift. And come through. Yeah. See if you feel a little different in your breathing. Right. So it's a wonderful practice. You can take it into your practice. It's recorded. I suggest it will build your strength and build these qualities of thinking, feeling, willing, and at the same time, help build strength in your astral body, in your etheric body. Begin to transform even the physical body. The transformation that is offered through eurythmy. And it's so special at Easter when we want to resurrect our own soul forces, just like Capasius was able to do with these 3 women from the spring in the Rock Spring Wonder. So let's end with feeling ourselves grounded in our body and reaching to the light. So feel twofold are the forces in me. One stream of forces goes downward, gives me weight, an inner root of being. One stream of forces goes upward. This fills me with light, with love of life. If you feel this modern world and all its problems pull you down, picture yourself buoyant. You remain a being of light. Gather yourself to the center. Make sure you got your feet. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mary. Always such a blessing. Yeah. Hope, faith, love. Yeah. Healing on all the levels.
Yes.
And so now, friends, we are at our time. And if you need to leave, I ask you to go into your life with our blessing and carry this Easter resurrection into all that you do, all that you think, all that you feel. And know that when we come back together, we will always be working in that heart space where we can redeem and bring love out to everything. So thank you. But I would like to stay and see if folks would like to engage with Dottie or Ines or Mary, if there's any comments or questions or insights you'd like to share through the work from today.
This offering had such richness and warmth. That the image that comes to my mind right now, that each time I go back to that memory, I get a little overwhelmed, is Ines, you were talking about the honeybee. They know where to go way up high, and something magic and mysterious happens. And there's something about like all this content, and then there's part we just this tiny little moment, and it feels like it's as if it's in my own column doing something I have no idea what it's doing, and it feels pretty magical.
Thank you. You know, one of the things I realized, Hazel, is that we didn't share. I mean, and people don't have to share, but if you want to share what you drew, that's something that you can do. I suppose if you want people to see it, you'd have, and not be in the little tiny picture, to have to unmute yourself for a moment and hold up your picture and say, this is what I drew, so that, you know, you'll appear big on everybody's screen if they have speaker view on. So if anybody wants to share, I would love to see your image of the swarming renewal of the Easter.
This is what I drew.
That little bee in there. Thank you.
Here's what I drew. It's kind of schematic. I'm not sure I understood it right. This is the old bee, the old queen's area. And this is the flight. She's gone up there. And these are coming in.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary. Thank you so much. That was so interesting to hear about the bees, and I'd love to come and visit you sometime.
Okay.
Sounds amazing what you're doing. I don't know where, I'm on my phone, so yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I was also struck by the whole flight of them up into the space in the sky, and I really felt it was like connecting with the hierarchies. It was really the resurrection.
Thank you.
It does look like hierarchies.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Thank you, Dottie. You guys were all awesome. Thank you, Hazel.
Thanks for coming in.
This is Lesta speaking. Can you all hear me? And I wish I'd brought crayons instead of pencil, but I don't know if you do this. It just came to me, and I'm really watching light these days, trying to get my shadow out of it. And it's basically light. So maybe you can't see it that well unless you're, but when I reached for my piece of paper, what I sort of accidentally, but I don't think it was accidentally, wound up uncovering was something I'd done a while ago. And initially I thought I would do light in a tree, okay? and I saw this and I thought, oh, I'll do another of it, since I wanted to work with or play with and work with what you had offered us. But since I had a little more extra time, I just put a whole lot more into this. I don't know if you can see all the raindrops and the spirit in the tree and stars and light, and it's got a lot happening, and a little door at the bottom of the tree. So thank you so much. And I'm so happy that I'm here with all of us. And I just wanted to share quickly, or I'll try to slow down a little bit, that what came to me when you were talking about the swarm, and I loved how you called her, but I had a memory of when I was volunteering and studying on the Summerfield Waldorf Biodynamic Farm here in Sonoma County. And I was arriving to work, and I saw all the others where we usually gather under this big tree. They were all zigzagging and running down the hill towards the parking lot where I was emerging from. And I thought, what's going on? But nobody stopped to say anything. So I just thought, well, maybe you never know with anthroposophy, maybe the dear farmer Perry asked us to run zigzags down the hill. But when I got closer to the tree, what was happening was a swarm because a big branch had fallen. So I started running in a big zigzag, and I thought I didn't really have time to think, but where I wound up finding sanctuary was I went into the greenhouse and closed the screen door, and it was just me and the plant spirits there. No one else no humans were there. And so I was there looking at the bees, and then I remembered deep inside of myself and said, it's okay, bees. I'm not here to harm you. You can go back to where you were. I mean, I don't remember my words. It was more thoughts and what came out. And they all calmed down. And they all, to me, felt like we're much more peaceful and stopped trying to get into the greenhouse with me. So I don't think it would have helped them anyway. So thank you so much for everyone's offering, and thank you.
Ines, I wanted to thank you too, and you also, Hazel. It was such an amazing afternoon. Did you see that?
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that I didn't know all that about bees, and I'm so grateful to understand that. I have bees in my backyard that my husband tends, and they come and talk to me once in a while, and I notice them, and I've noticed the swarms lately, but I didn't understand any of this. And it's really a huge service to share that with people. And I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say something to Ines if I could.
Hi.
Ines, I've been doing research work on the origins of money and coins, and I didn't know where they came from, because I had bought and sold U.S. coins, but I traced it all the way back to the previous Michael age, and I ended up in Ephesus. And one of the very first coins they ever struck had a queen bee on the obverse.
Oh, you have to come over this way a little. Oh, you don't have it?
No, I don't have it, but I have a different one to show you. But on the back of it was the forepart of a stag.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it just gave me and of course I had been familiar with 9 lectures on bees. So it gave me the inspiration of the last chapter in my book. And I want to call it the economics of love, based on the economy of the hive. And the coin I have in front of me it was struck in Ephesus and has a bee on the back of it. And on the front of it is a woven basket with a raised lid and a serpent coming out of it. And numismatists call it a Sista Mystica. And on the back is the bouquets of Hercules.
Whoa.
But pardon?
That's amazing. Can we see it?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. It might not show up with very much light. Can you see anything?
No, you have to hold in front of the camera. We see your face, but not nothing. I can't see what you're holding up. Oh, there it is. Go back.
That way?
No, the other way.
This way?
No, hold on.
Over there.
There we go. Yeah, go up.
Up. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's incredible.
But the Ephesian silver tetragram bee is very large, and it's a very prominent queen bee.
We
And-
saw the basket with the snake. Do you think you could turn it around and do the same thing to see the bee?
Oh yeah. Here, I'll turn it over on the back. Let's see. The bee might not be legible, but it's there.
Yeah.
And of course, that way.
Yeah.
That way. Up.
Yeah, there you go. I can't, it's a little hard to see for me, but.
Well, yeah, you have to really look at it under a good halogen light, and then you can see the bee. And of course, they had to create dies to engrave this on a coin. So they create the dies first, and then they take the two dies and they put a planchet in the middle, and they strike it 3 or 4 times to get the impression to come up off the surface of the metal.
Wow.
But it's fascinating that it would go all the way back to Ephesus. And I realized, oh my God, the origins of biodynamics is in Ephesus. Because why would they put the forepart of a stag on the reverse? And you know, if you take yarrow and stuff it in the bladder of a stag, you get one of the BD preparations, right? Yeah, I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, and can you guys hear me? I think I unmuted. That I will never forget, and I know you as Hank, and I'm Dusty. We knew each other in Sebastopol years and years ago. I'll never forget. Hi. I will never forget the silver coin that you showed me from the Temple of Diana, with the writing of the goddess Diana on it. So I just had to add that.
Yeah, I've got another coin in the other room that's got the Artemis statue in the center of a tetrastyle temple, and it's struck in Ephesus.
Wow.
Yeah, I call it an anthroposophical history of money, really, is what it is, because anthroposophists are often pictured on as images on these coins. And even this coin, is called a Christopher tetragram. You only know what's in that basket if you read one of the lectures by Steiner, and what's in it are archetypal, what would you say, items that relate to the physical body, the astral body, the etheric body, the first 21 years of life. A coiled rope, a golden dagger, and a torch. So I call it the language of the mysteries on these old coins.
So many connections on so many levels, and the gold of the bee and the gold coins. Yeah. Anyone else have any comments or insights to share?
Hazel, I'm wondering, is Dottie there?
Yeah.
Hazel? Yeah, I don't know. She was Dottie.
Yeah, I was just taking Johanna back to her room. Yeah, I'm here.
Oh.
Hey, Lucian.
Hi, Dottie. I was just inspired to ask you if there's anything you could speak about this, but even though today has been a day of just profound life and beauty for me, I also sense a profound sadness today, specifically in relationship to Sophia, and it's sort of weighing on me. And it feels very holy, but very just sorrowful. And I just wanted to ask you if that inspired you to say anything.
Yeah, I would offer, I guess my question goes to anthroposophia. And this question of, as anthroposophists, most of us in the room, I imagine, we have this picture that my mentor shared that we are weaving her sheaths by what we do and what we say and how we are, that we're responsible. So I kind of connect her with the Nathan soul, you know, the Nathan soul that bears the Christ. And so this picture, for me anyway, you know, I could say, yeah, it's this picture of crucifying the Christ every day. It's not just, you know, one day a year. And so I can imagine with the depth of joy that he is risen, also comes this depth of sadness that one can see with the Mother Mary in the picture that we see in the Waldorf schools. You know, so I would offer the being Anthroposophia for me connected to the Luke soul, the Nathan soul, continues to bear this every day. Yeah, this death and this resurrection and this death and this resurrection and this death and this resurrection in our own being. Yeah.
Thank you. I knew I needed to ask you.
Yeah, thank you.
If I may share, I'm feeling something very specific. Lucian, you bring such tenderness and reality when you say that. And I think this is something for all of us, and for me to be able to speak it too, is to see the sadness, just see it and be with it and let it be the opening. As you mentioned, you felt the holy and the sadness. There's a mystery in the present moment for you, and you're sharing it in the group of now 26 human beings. And there's something there to simply be present to. This morning in a group, along with the group that we were in this morning all together, but I was in another group and we were reading Emil Bach, and he was talking about the different types of openings and how an opening for Mary Magdalene could have been the anxiety of not knowing where the Christ was, or it could come in many ways. It could come from awe and reverence. In this case, it feels like there's something quite warm, potentially, in the sad and the holy.
Thank you. That was totally real. Yeah.
Dear friends, it might be the time to go outside soon. Yeah? I agree. There's been so much transformation and we are all part of it. And, you know, how are we going to become the butterfly unless we dissolve a little bit here and there? You know, and that's not always a comfortable process. And of course, you know, the earth itself is undergoing such pressures and such change, and just being beings of the earth, we have to feel those shifts as well. Right. And with the deed of redemption that happened on Golgotha, there was an amazing transformation, right? This, because we were in this sort of unruly Mars period of time for the earth, right? This rusty iron. And now it's changing into this silvery light of Mercury. So maybe we're feeling that shuffling, you know, shuffling off that rust and opening up to that chalice that Mary was talking about. You know, this transforming of iron in our blood, right? The sacred mystery of the Christ blood is working through all of our blood that we all share. You know, and this, you know, it's a real determining factor of the transformation that is also happening in the earth with the Christ. And it's a transubstantiation, really. And I loved that image that you brought, Ines, of the bee bringing the light up from the center of the earth, you know, to help us transform. That's so powerful. You know, this you know, that the spirit is radiating from the heights, and yet also there's this eternal world of the depths that is calling out for us to redeem as well. You know, so can we, you know, send our prayers to the Christ heart in the earth steps, you know, and to really help overcome and redeem the adversarial powers. And that every time we see a bee, we can thank them for doing that work with us, you know. And I really just think that these all of you that are working with the biodynamic energies, it's really a stepping stone to this ultimate aim of you know, cultivating this Christ impulse that lives now in the earth, in this golden legendary land of Shambhala, right? It's hidden away from us right now, and yet it's waiting to be discovered by our seeking. So yeah, and I think that the bees are there also to really help us to, you know, take the tomb and turn it into a round table, you know, where we can really ask the Parsifal question, you know, like Dottie was saying, you know, in the social realm, you know, to care for the other, you know, to find the Christ in the other, and the only way we're going to do that, you know, if we do that, then that's how we'll be able to find the Christ in the etheric. So today I also had some disturbing dreams, and I tried to wake up and remember that, you know, before the mystery of Golgotha, our task of evolution was that, you know, the cosmos would become human. And so here we are, and we're suffering, you know, and that suffering means we're transforming. And that after this turning point, the human must become the cosmos, that we are this new sun, you know, this imperishable resurrection body. And that includes uniting with the cosmic Sophia, you know, through the chalice of hope and the wonder hammer of faith and trust, right? And that's, you know, and the only way to really work with those tools is to continue to weave rays of love. So I've really felt the love this week and today. So much beauty has been shared. I think we've all been changed, and I'm so grateful. So with that, my friends, I say, let us go forth and rejoice in all the aspects of our lives. Thank you, Dottie. Thank you, Ines. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, all you friends, for being here and sharing your spirit spark with this growing light of spring. Peace.
Thank you, Hazel. Thank you, dear friends. Many blessings.
Thank you.
Thanks for holding the fort, Dottie.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Easter.
Hi, Rose. Thank you.
Hi, happy Easter.
Easter blessings all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Gloria.
So hard to love to you all.
Thank you, Dusty.
Many kisses till we meet again.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good to see you. Are you cold? Really? I'm sweating over here.
Yes, freezing
Wow.
in Wales. Yeah.
Oh, she's in Wales. That's right.
Oh.
Mary, thank you. That story was, we have to work with that. We have to work with that.
Yeah.
Say it again.
The dog is asking to go out. So
Oh,
I'm going
good.
to
You're taking us on a walk.
Dottie. Thank you, Inez. Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mary.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Nicolette. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Hazel.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, we're actually going to do an Ascension Festival with Luigi Morelli. So stay tuned for details on that. Peace, friends.